So you have Asperger syndrome, that is to say you have high-functioning autism, but you also are displaying traits of avoidant personality disorder. So here's the question. Stop and think about this. Who is avoiding whom? Seriously, who is actually avoiding whom? Are you avoiding people, or are they avoiding you? Could it be that you avoid people because they avoid you? Now, this is something the therapists often miss, and I think the reason is because many therapists, as qualified as they are, as good as they are, have never actually experienced this. So they don't have a point of reference from life's laboratory. That's where we come in. Now, have you ever been in a situation where you walk into a room full of people and you just feel kind of invisible? It's like you're not even there. Everyone just ignores you. They're avoiding you. And your response is, early in life, to try to connect, but somehow you can't do it, and after a while you just learn this is the way it is. They avoid me, and so I avoid them. Or have you had this experience where you walk into a room full of people and you feel like Moses walking into the Red Sea? Everybody just parts. It's like you have this aura about you that is not good, and people just sense this guy is a problem. She has a space alien aura about her. So we're just going to kind of stay away, or you walk up and talk to somebody and they give you that look, or they kind of look away, and you can tell they're trying to get away from you, and it's not the way you smell. It's just something about your personality. They're trying to get away from you. So avoidant personality, the point that I'm making is avoidant personality may be rooted not in our inability to connect with others, but the inability of others to connect with us. It's not that we're avoiding them, it's that we are responding to them avoiding you. So we have some points we want to talk about. In fact, we have 9 of them altogether. We want you to listen to these all the way to the end to make sure that you don't miss anything. Number 1. Again, the question is, who is avoiding whom? Number 1 is this: feeling socially inept, inferior, or just unappealing to other people. This occurs when you realize that there is a social acceptance spectrum. That is to say that we have all encountered people who are tremendously charismatic. Now, when you were in school, particularly high school, maybe junior high or middle school, there was a kid or a group of kids who were very popular. And there may have been a kid or a group of kids who were very unpopular, and everybody else was kind of in the middle. So that would be a spectrum, from the most popular to the least popular, and maybe you were on that lower end, the totem pole, the lower end of the spectrum. And that hierarchy of who is acceptable and who is not acceptable. And you're on the low bottom part of the hierarchy. So consequently, that gives you a feeling that there is something flawed about you. There's something wrong with you. So what do you do with this? Well, you learn that you are held in contempt just because of who you are, not because of something you've done or said, but just by the virtue of you being you. And so you learn from the way that they treat you to avoid them. Number 2 is this: consequently, you may have an inability to socialize. Now, the fact of the matter is, people with Asperger syndrome, not inclusively, not all of us, but many, don't socialize because, well, we just can't socialize. Now, people tend to socialize, as do all animals, basically. We tend to socialize based upon our genetics. We are pre-programmed genetically to socialize with other creatures like ourselves. Now, some people just have a better program. Some people are inherently more capable of socializing than others. So the outcome is this: we feel awkward and sometimes terrified. I can remember many times nobody could see it, but I could feel it. And that was a sense of terror, of really just fear of being around other people. Now, I did a video a few months ago explaining this to people who don't feel it, and I told them, look, do this. If you want to understand how people with Asperger syndrome feel, then get in front of a crowd of people and give a speech. Now, some people can do that. Oddly, I could do that with no problem whatsoever, but many people, it's like they're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. They have this fear come over them. They become extremely self-conscious. They become anxious. They become terrified. I have encountered a few people, not many, but a few people who actually had to run off a stage because they were so terrified of being in front of people. Now imagine feeling those sensations of fear, anxiety, terror every time you're with a group of people. Now imagine this, going every single day of your life, going to school every day of your life, being terrified, just like some people are terrified of public speaking. That is what we're talking about. We have that inability to socialize. It's just not programmed in our brains the way it is, as effectively, I should say, or efficiently, as it is with typical people. Number 3 is this: avoids occupational activity. So if you're terrified every time you get around people and you become very self-conscious and you don't know what to say, and if you did know what to say, you wouldn't be able to say it because when you open your mouth, it comes out strange. What happens is you find yourself incapable of working. It's kind of hard to hold a job when everybody around you thinks you're a space alien, when they think you're a little bit weird, when they hold you in contempt, where you are not the brunt of the joke, but you actually are the joke. It's hard to hold down a job. Doesn't matter how qualified you are, doesn't matter how loyal you are to the company, doesn't matter if you show up on time every time, it doesn't matter if you work very hard and actually know what you're doing. But if you don't fit in socially, if you don't fit socially, it's virtually impossible to hold down a job. The result of that is, or that is the result of, I should say, avoidant personality disorder. But that takes us back to the original question. Is it them avoiding us or them rejecting us? You know, there's 2 ways of avoidance. One is where you get away from people, and the other is where you push people away from you. So it could be I withdraw, that's avoidance, or it could be I push you away, that's avoidance. Typically in the workplace or in school, it is that second kind, where they push you away. They're the ones with avoidant personality disorder of type. But you learn every time you get around people, they push you away, and anticipating to be pushed away, you know it's going to happen. So you just stay away. It's kind of like touching a hot iron. After you get burned a few times, okay, maybe just one time, you learn very quickly, I'm not going to touch that again. And the same thing is with social circumstances. It happens time and time and time again, and you learn that this hurts. I'm going to stay away from it. So the question is, hang on, are they avoiding me or am I avoiding them, or is it both? Number 4 is avoids involvement with others. So while we experience at work and at school, we experience everywhere with neurotypical people. Missing is not only the emotional support that is necessary to mental health. So what we're saying there is that I think it's just commonly known that there is, for a healthy mental mindset, there needs to be some social interaction. But what if you are denied that? What if, well, think of it in these terms. You need to have vitamin A to have a healthy body. If you don't have vitamin A, eventually you'll lose your eyesight. And think of social interaction as kind of a vitamin for your brain. And if you don't have that vitamin socialization, then your brain doesn't function correctly and you become avoidant. So it's not just work, it's not just school. It seems to be everywhere. Could be in your neighborhood, could be at the grocery store, Could be a church, wherever you happen to go, wherever you happen to be. You notice, there you go, you walk in, you're invisible. Or you walk in, you're Moses, Red Sea of people, just parts, they all try to get away from you. Go up to someone, try to have a conversation, and you can tell they're kind of pushing you out of the way. In fact, in some cases, they're just flat out embarrassed to be seen with you because you are a social liability. So that takes us to number 5, which is few or no close friends. So one of the disadvantages of not having close friends and not being able to socialize is you miss out on the benefits of social networking. So for example, and there are a zillion of these examples, but say, for example, your car breaks down. You need a good, reliable, dependable mechanic who's not going to take advantage of you, which fortunately I happen to have one of those, but you don't have one. So you ask around to your friends and people at work or people at school or people in your neighborhood, do you know a good mechanic? But you don't have any friends to ask. You don't have a social network to ask. So what you wind up doing is you wind up going on the internet and you go to one of those websites that refers people, and those are questionable at very best because virtually every professional on the planet, okay, in the country, is on that social network trying to get business. And so it's really no different from driving down the street and just randomly picking out a mechanic. But, pick anything. You need somebody to do some home repair, or you need somebody for professional services like a doctor or a dentist. Who are you going to ask? Who is going to refer those people to you? Well, you find that through social networking. But you don't have a social network, and so you are denied that. Number 6 is this: persistence and that self-perception. So we say this is cyclical. By that we mean this: others will avoid you because you have Asperger syndrome, or Asperger syndrome, I like to say. They reject you, they avoid you, and so you avoid them. And so they avoid you. And they say that, well, this guy's aloof. Or this woman is, she's kind of arrogant. She doesn't talk to anybody because nobody will talk to her. So it's cyclical. It just keeps going back and forth, and that causes your self-perception, which sometimes, we're not saying this is inaccurate. Your self-perception may be that people just don't like me, and maybe that's not inaccurate. Maybe people just don't like you. Again, there is a spectrum. On the one end are those who are charismatic, and on the other end are those who are repulsive. And all of us fall on that spectrum somewhere. And we can't all be charismatic. We can't all have it, as they like to say in Hollywood. We don't all have it. And if we don't have it, and if we're on that low end of the hierarchy, seriously, we need to acknowledge that. We need to recognize it, because you can't deal with a problem unless you say, I got a problem, and you recognize that you have the problem. Number 7 is this: you have feelings of inhibition. Have you ever walked into a crowd, I was going to say a class, but walk into a crowd anywhere, and you just feel withdrawn? You feel inhibited. You don't look up, you look down, you can't look people in the eye, you feel terribly uncomfortable. Again, it's kind of like standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, or to some people like standing in front of a crowd to give a speech. But that is what you feel. That's inhibition. That's what you feel every time you are around a group of people. What happens is those traits are exasperated by, or caused by, life experiences. You learn that from the very beginning, or you don't learn to overcome it. Now, I've seen little kids, little toddlers, and they talk to anybody. They will run up to people, or you pass them somewhere, and they say hi. They don't even know you. But there are other little kids, little toddlers, who are terrified of people from the very beginning. They run and hide. They bury their face. Now, people with Asperger syndrome, I don't know which one they are to begin with, but if they are the toddler who can't seem to connect with people, that just stays there. It doesn't change. And so we're like these little toddlers who just can't connect with people. And we try to get out of the shell. We feel like a turtle in a shell. And every time we poke our head out to look around, somebody nips at us. Somebody pokes us back in. So we learn to stay in our shell. The problem is we become very, or I should say the outcome is we become very awkward around other people. And we just can't seem to overcome it. Now that, by the way, may be the time when you need to consider going to talk to a therapist. All right, number 8 is this: self-evaluation and negative conclusion. Now, by the way, that is not always bad, as we said before. So we understand, okay, we have this problem of avoidance. We have this problem of social connectivity. We just can't do it. Just can't do it. And it's not that we don't connect with them, but they don't connect with us. Well, it's both. And we recognize that. I mean, come on. It's kind of hard to miss it. So we evaluate ourselves and we say there's something wrong with me. And by the way, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can think happy, positive thoughts if you want, but if you're sick and you think, I'm not sick, okay, how are you going to solve the problem? Now, I'm not saying that avoidant personality is a sickness, but we would say it is a disorder, and if you don't recognize you have it, how are you going to solve it? How are you going to solve a problem if you don't admit, I got a problem? Unless you don't think it's a problem, if you're happy to be that way, then be that way. The end objective is to be happy. But we draw these negative conclusions. And sometimes they're accurate. But we say, people don't like me. People avoid me for some reason. I don't know specifically what it is, but I know that it is. And I know it's got something to do with Asperger syndrome. I know it's there. Maybe I should go get some help. Or if you're happy with it, if you're content, that's your call. But we do tend to have negative conclusions. Those can be greatly distorted. Now, if it takes you to the point of depression, specifically serious deep depression, just my opinion, you do what you want, but just my opinion is that is a time you need to talk to somebody who is a professional. That's the time when you get off YouTube and you get on Google and start searching for professionals, therapists who deal with depression, and be sure, this is my opinion again, but be sure you seek out somebody who is competent in that specific area. You want someone who specializes in depression, somebody who specializes in autism or Asperger syndrome. Number 9 is this: we avoid taking risk that involves other people, and just like everything else we talked about before, this is deeply rooted in our past experiences, our present experiences. We watch as we are taken as fools, not just the brunt of the joke, but we actually are the joke. Seems like we are always pushed aside, sometimes literally, I mean physically, especially kids have this problem. They are physically pushed aside because there's something there that the other kids don't like. They can't put their finger on it, but okay, it's back to the space alien. This kid's just weird. And they don't even know why, but they know that this kid with Asperger syndrome, and they don't know what it is. All they know is he or she is a social liability, and they don't want to be seen with this person. Nor do they want to be seen being nice to this person, because just being nice is a social liability. Other people will think they're weak or something. So we avoid the risk of being pushed. Sometimes it's just avoidance, and sometimes it's physical, pushing you away. When you know the outcome will inevitably be social defeat, it's no longer a risk, It's a likelihood. It's a guarantee. And so the solution is stay away. Because if I get close, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to get hurt. I mean, it happened last time, the time before that, the time before that, the time before that. In fact, most of us with Asperger syndrome can actually make a list of specific times, occurrences, where we were pushed aside, where we went to be with a crowd of people, maybe church, maybe school, maybe the workplace, maybe shopping, wherever people gather, where we were effectively ostracized, and we don't even know why. Well, we do know why now, but we couldn't at the time understand what is different about us. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it on social media. Don't forget, if you would please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you've not done that already. And here's a couple videos that you'll want to watch.